had an in-camera session, and we recessed at 6:04, and now we're back. So the agenda has been adopted, and we're moving on. So, open public business meeting. Motions arising from closed session, we have none. Adoption of previous minutes. Councillor Wilkie?
Oh, we need to make a motion, come back in.
Motion come back in.
Yes.
There you go. Gordon made that. All in favor? There we are. Okay. 6.1, regular council business meeting minutes from January 20th, 2020.
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Wilkie gives the motion to adopt. Any comments, concerns on the minutes?
They look good.
Look good. Excellent. All in favor of adoption? Thank you. That's carried. Question period. At the beginning of every business meeting, council has a 15-minute question period where the public can ask questions. Usually in written form, we get it first. This is your chance to ask any clarifying questions of council or administration. Have we received any questions this evening, Mr. Sharp? None? Seeing none, we will move on. 8.1, public hearing. All right. So, I'm just going to do some preamble reading here that's mandated by the MGA for any public hearing. So I hereby declare the public hearing for Bylaw 10-1100 open at 6:32 p.m. regulation-wise. This public hearing is held pursuant to Section 230 of the Municipal Government Act to hear representations from the public on proposed bylaw number 20-1100 to remove the municipal reserve designation on Lot 8MR Block 21, Plan 821-1156 to facilitate the disposition of town-owned land. I am Mayor Barry Crane, and I am the chairperson for tonight's hearing. Will council please introduce themselves, starting from my left? Councillor Waring.
John Waring.
Jamie. Jonathan Gordon.
Gary Robb.
Lana Hamilton. Cindy Holiday.
Perfect. And will administration please introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Sharp?
CAO Todd Sharp.
Legislative Services, Heather Thompson.
Cindy Belong, Community Services Manager.
And Gary Malenka, Director of Development and Infrastructure.
Thank you. Hearing preamble. All discussions of council members, administration, and speakers shall be directed to myself as chairperson. During the public hearing, we ask that you respect the views of everyone here and allow each person their time to speak without interruption. Each person wishing to speak will be given up to 5 minutes to make a presentation to council. When you come up to speak, I ask that you indicate if you are speaking on your own behalf or on behalf of another person or group of persons or an organization. When you are finished speaking, please remain at the front, as council may wish to ask you some questions. All conduct at a hearing will be carried out in an orderly fashion in accordance with normal parliamentary procedures. Confirm notification. I would at this time ask Mr. Malenka, who we have here, to confirm whether this public hearing has been advertised and notice given in accordance with the requirements of the Municipal Government Act. Mr. Malenka.
It has been, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Thank you. Written submissions. Ms. Malenka, has the town received any written submissions? And if so, I would ask that they be read aloud and entered into the recording by yourself.
Mr. Mayor, no written submissions have been sent into the town.
All right, thank you. At this point of the hearing, I will call upon anyone wishing to speak to the proposed bylaw. Please note that each party wishing to speak will have one opportunity to do so. Council members may ask presenters questions for the purpose of clarifying the speaker's comments. Council will not debate the matter during this hearing. The decision regarding whether to grant the bylaw further readings will be dealt with later on the agenda or at a subsequent meeting if deemed necessary. At this point in the public hearing, we ask that the applicant make a presentation. However, as the town is the applicant, the staff report presented by the Director of Development and Infrastructure will be considered this presentation. So we're going to hand it over to you, and then we will see if we have speakers.
Mr. Mayor, if you may. Can you on the microphone?
I'm going a little bit out of order. I want to have the presentation first, and then I want to have the speakers. So go ahead.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Before you is a public hearing for bylaw 20-1100, and it's a bylaw for the removal of designation of municipal reserve for lot 8 MR block 21, plan 8211156, also known civically as 609 Anderson Crescent. Purpose of the bylaw is to remove the municipal reserve designation that is on the subject lands. As noted already, the town is the applicant in this case. The current land use district applicable to this subject property is Public Service District. And the parcel in question represents 0.367 hectares, or just shy of an acre at 0.908 acres. Council provided direction with regards to these lands in this bylaw dating back to December 2nd, when the lands were declared surplus via policy MP D0415. And subsequently, first reading was given to the bylaw 20-1100 on January 6th of this year. With regards to the location, it's located in the northwest, north central part of town, between or west of Main Street and between Dunham Lane and Edward Avenue. And the property can be accessed from Anderson Crescent as well as a laneway just in behind Main Street. Notification was provided in a number of ways. Notification in order to meet the Municipal Government Act was provided via the Okotoks Western Wheel advertisement on January 22nd and 29th issues. Additional notification was done to adjacent neighbors. You'll see the colored dark areas shown on the map ahead of you indicating who was circulated. We do have a miss on an adjacent parcel, but it doesn't negate the MGA requirements. I can speak to more to that if council has any questions. And then finally, an office copy was available at the office of bylaw 20-1100 for anybody who may wanted to come into the office to look at the bylaw. With regards to surrounding uses, on the map you see before you in the light blue/purple is the subject lands. So to the north we have a country residential parcel, UR, highlighted in green, and to the northwest we have residential in the form of an R1X lands. To the south it's all R1X lands. The larger parcel you see immediately to the south, sort of southeast, is an undeveloped parcel. To the east we have laneway, and then further to that we have residential R1 lands between Main Street and the lane. And then finally to the west we have Anderson Crescent, and beyond that residential lands zoned R1X. That concludes the presentation with regards to what we're seeking. Thank you.
Thank you. One question for you. The property, if you just want to go back to the map, the triangular portion where the resident is directly west, yeah, that one. I noticed that hasn't been identified, so if you could clarify why they didn't receive a notification. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Oversight on administration's behalf. We were doing adjacents plus one, is typically what we do, and then we do a spreadsheet. So looking at the spreadsheet this afternoon, preparing for the presentation, it looks like administratively we've missed circulating directly to that parcel. So these lots you have shown, or I have shown in dark purple, were given a direct mail out. So what we advertised in the Western Wheel, they were given a direct copy via mail. Under the Municipal Government Act, there's provisions required. So to make sure, we usually, where possible, we try to double up on our efforts to notify, to make sure in case one fails we have coverage on the other. And this is an example of where we obviously had a misread. So under section 606(2) of the MGA, our requirements are one of three options. One is to publish at least once a week for 2 consecutive weeks in a local newspaper. That we did, and we have confirmation that did get published. So we've met that requirement. The second requirement could be, if we chose not to do the advertising of the newspaper, was mailed or delivered to every residence in the area to which the proposed bylaw, resolution, or other thing relates, or in which the meeting or hearing is to be held. We made best efforts to do that, but obviously we've missed an adjacent parcel in this case. And then finally, given by a method provided in the bylaw under section 606(1), and that can be in reference to the land use bylaw through special provisions. However, this isn't a land use bylaw matter, it's a straight bylaw matter because it's outside of the purview of the LUB, land use bylaw, excuse me. So it just defaults to any policy or procedure we may have.
Okay, so just to be clear then, we actually did twice the amount. In terms of, we advertised legally twice in the Western Wheel, as well as part 2, we delivered what we thought was 100% of adjacent landowners, just missing one.
That's correct, yeah. We
Okay.
did a little bit of extra coverage, but we met the MGA requirements.
Excellent. Okay, well that's good to know. All right, any questions on the presentation to council, from council? Councillor Rapp.
I just have one question, Mr. Malenka. That piece of land that we missed, that's currently occupied, is it not? There is an owner there, is there not? That somebody lives there? Yeah, thank you.
Through the mayor, yes, my understanding is it's presently occupied,
I'm
yes.
sure it is, yeah.
Any other comments from council? No? Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Malenka. At this time, I would like to ask if anyone would like to speak in support of the proposed bylaw. Please come forward to just where Mr. Malenka is here. State your name and address for the record, and you may speak your support. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak in support of the bylaw? Going once, going twice. Last chance. Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Call to others to speak in opposition. At this time, I would ask if anyone would like to speak in opposition to the proposed bylaw, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Do I have anyone who would wish to speak against the bylaw to remove the MR designation on this property? Any member of the public? Going once, twice. State it one more time. At this time, I would ask if anyone would like to speak in opposition of the proposed bylaw. Please come forward and state your name and address and your concern. All right, seeing none, we will continue on. Other speakers, is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the proposed bylaw who has not yet had the opportunity to do so? And seeing none, we're just gonna move on again. Close the hearing. I would like to thank all of those who spoke at the bylaw. Council will take all your comments into consideration, then decide on this matter. With that said, I declare the public hearing for bylaw 10-1120, bylaw 1100 closed at 6:43 p.m. And that is all. Okay, thank you everyone who came to hear that. Not really a very exciting bylaw, but there you have it. So just for the public's edification, again, we will bring this back to our next business meeting, and then it will be debated. And oh,
Actually,
sorry,
on
yeah,
tonight's
it's
agenda.
on today's. Sorry, I should know that. There you go. Okay, moving on. Delegations. West Path delivery update by TC Energy. Gentlemen, if you'd like to come forward. Mr. Sharp, I'll have you introduce.
Thank you, Mayor Crane. I think you did. We have DC Energy folks here to give an update on the West Path delivery project.
All right, just hit that little button in the front there. When it's blinking, it doesn't work till I activate it. There you go. The floor is yours, gentlemen.
Just give me a nod when you're ready to move.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having us today. I'm Preston Sire and Spencer McKay, and we're just here to talk about two projects. One that we are currently in the process of doing, which Spencer will talk to, and a new one that we're looking to do that's quite a ways down the road, but we'd like to come out as early as we can just to start that conversation. So if you don't mind just going down to the first page, you can just go past that one. And just an overview. Obviously you guys are very aware of us and who we are, but this just slide speaks a little bit to the broader scope that one of the pieces of how big we are as a company. Obviously we had a name change recently. Some people were confused why we did this. It's something that we'd like to speak to a lot, which is for bigger reasons than we are one. We are not leaving. We are a Canadian company. It was not along with that. It just really showcases our actual diversified portfolio that we have. Most people only know us for pipelines. They don't know that we have 11 power facilities, that we're in with Bruce Nuclear, that we do a lot of things. You look at the amount that we do too. Obviously, pipelines are our bread and butter. We do about 25% of this continent's natural gas supply, so it definitely is our biggest one. But we felt it was time to change that, and also because we own a lot in the United States and in Mexico now, that TC Energy just better showcased who we were. So, I'll just go through. Spencer, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so this is the 2020 West Path delivery project. So just because there is always confusion with this, we have West Path Delivery 2020 and we have West Path Delivery 2023. So for this component, this is what's going on in Cochrane, just over in your backyard at the Turner Valley Compressor Station, and further down Highway 22 at the Burton Creek Compressor. So we're just finishing up mainline construction in Cochrane. The Turner Valley compressor is looking to wrap up in April, so that's all reseeded, put back together. We've made some commitments to look at planting some trees as well. So, and then Burton Creek finishing up in April as well, so you can continue down from there. So some major milestones we've hit, April to September, we mobilized to site, we did all of our earthworks, bothered people with pilings and a whole bunch of other stuff off the bat. It was a real cumbersome construction process right off the get-go, but at this point we've finished the majority of our blowdown and major construction activities, including hauling, getting our buildings to site. And high-pressure gas piping is 98% complete. I know that doesn't mean much to anyone, but that is the bulk of what they're doing there, is interconnecting all that high-pressure gas piping. Compressor building's complete. That was our biggest load to site, which is always a scary thought, getting those big compressor buildings down those range roads. So a lot of what we've done to date is pretty much wrapped up, and it's just kind of the finishing touches at this point. So right now, we're in the process of testing our generator at site. It's 20 days to ensure that it can run 500 hours without interruption, obviously a safety mechanism for us. So that should be wrapping up shortly as well, and the system is targeted to be pressurized late February, but again, we're gonna be wrapping up everything by April. On to the next one. All right, the 2023 project. So this is the new stuff that we're going to be working on. Like Preston said, we're out real early talking about this. The anticipated construction time is, in 2023. So we're a ways out, but as you know, we do a lot of public consultation and whatever our regulatory applications as well. But this whole delivery project consists of 3 components: the Turner Valley section, which is about 23 kilometers running from just south of the Pritis Golf Course down to our Turner Valley compressor here. The next section is the Longview section. That's 8 kilometers, with the center point of that 8K being Bayou Ranch. And then the third section being the Lundbreck section, and that goes basically just over the Livingston path, or not Livingston, yeah, the Livingston Range down near Lundbreck, that's right. Yep. And so that's 7 kilometers through there as well. Each of these components are going to be paralleling existing infrastructure. So we're going to be looking to utilize as much of our existing right-of-ways and land rights as possible as we work our way down the line. So it's always our preference to parallel. It's much easier and simpler than greenfield builds. So that's the proposal for 2023. So we're out in the community talking to people already. We've had what we call 1 round of consultation, and that's showing some high-level maps, talking with landowners, gathering concerns, obviously coming here and having presentations like this as well. So we already got the ball rolling as far as figuring out what people's concerns and fears are and how we're going to mitigate that as this goes on. On to the next one. Yeah, so the Turner Valley section here, again, I pretty much explained it, 23K running from just south of the golf course to the compressor. Again, engagement start has happened, project notifications, they have gone out, and our project application to the Canada Energy Regulator is slated for Q4 2020. So that does take a bit of time because this project is large in nature with its 3 components. We're expecting a lengthy approval timeline. So our clearing start in Q4 2022 and mainline construction Q4 2023. And as you can see, we're a long ways away from putting gas in it with an in-service date of Q4 2023.
Quick question for you.
Yeah.
Just in the terms of the application process, so is this provincial or is it both provincial and federal?
It's federal only. So
only.
Our pipeline network, because it spans provincial boundaries and international boundaries, anything built in our system goes through the Canada Energy Regulator, which is, you previously would have known it as the National Energy Board, or NEB. They've had a name change and a rebrand, so it is the CER, or Canada Energy Regulator now.
Yeah. Okay. Thus the lengthy.
Yes.
Yeah, at the same time.
Yeah, and so the timelines for all three of these components are the same. They're all on the same regulatory application, the same construction schedule, but those maps just give you a sense of where they are there.
And will you run 3 separate crews, so they're all being done in tandem, or would you go Curtis, Turner Valley, then?
No, it'll be
Down
3
one.
separate crews all run in tandem,
Yep.
so it will be quite the bid process
Yep.
from
Okay.
a workforce standpoint.
Right on. Okay, thank you. Any other questions of council before he continues? No. Okay, keep going.
I can give this one.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, this just talks a little bit about the workers, the 1,000 workers that you see, that's an overall between the 3 of them, and you guys are well aware of how this works. It's never gonna be 1,000 at one point in time, ebbs and flows, up and down. We're gonna be looking, of course, to have entry level, skilled, laborers, indigenous, laborers and workers, and what we need people to understand as always is that we're a big company and that you have to go through our, vendor registration to work with us. Gone are the days of just giving somebody a job, so we have to go through those processes. And the next slide, too. What to expect during construction, as always, we'll do everything to make sure we don't have any, as little noise, as little air, lights, all of those, to make sure that it is a good process for both of us. And we've done work recently in the area. There's some lessons learned, I'm sure, that we're gonna go over and make sure that, everything's done appropriately and that everyone's happy in the end of all of it. And lastly, community benefits. I'm sure you guys are aware of these as well. The one thing I'll just leave on it is, as always, we can't do a community investment if we don't get it applied for through our registration as well. We always joke that you can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket. So if you have anything big or small, I sit on the CAT team personally. I can't say yes and I can't say no right now, but I can guarantee you if it's not in there, it won't happen. So please, we look forward to doing anything we can in the community with emergency response or the pillars that we have. So.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Just hit your button there.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Um,
it's all good.
Just wondering if you can, say how we would apply again for,
Yeah.
community investment opportunities?
Yeah, sure. I can send you the link. Basically,
Okay.
we have a website that you go through that you apply, and obviously you can still email myself, but it just has to go through the certain process that we have and meet certain pillars that we have: education, safety, emergency response, those types of things.
Great.
So I can definitely send you a link for what you need to do.
That'd be wonderful, thank you.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you guys. I did get stuck behind one of those big fans going down the highway, so that slowed me down a bit. So other than that, I don't hold it against you. I appreciate you guys trying to route the traffic as best you could to avoid impact on the community. Definitely appreciated. I did have some questions out of this 2020 exercise. Just folks asking, how, as a local tradesperson, do you actually get employed? I know there's kind of the vendor link, but in this prior instance, it was, Mastec was running the job on site. Do you have policies in place that provide a preference to local labor? How do you guys kind of handle that? And if you've got somebody who is just a local laborer, what's the best way for them to try to get onto a project like this?
Great question. I can speak to that. I dealt with a little bit of the concern that was coming from the community as far as their ability to team up with Mastec or even Michael's on the Cochrane section as well. For us, and like Preston said, this has been a huge learning process for us out here. And what happens is they go to our vendor registration list. We ultimately hire a prime contractor. That prime contractor is given the exclusive right to manage the construction of that project as they see fit. Typically, we do write in percentages of local hire or indigenous hire into their contract, but there's no stipulations necessarily that it has to be the hydrovac guy or whomever it is from Turner Valley that gets on the project. So, we're working a little harder this time to more clearly define the boundaries of local hire. Because when we put that in the contracts in the past, it didn't necessarily stipulate it had to come from this MD or this town or whatever it may be. So, again, we gave a lot of trust and support to our prime contractors to choose their vendors. As we go through this cycle again, I learned a lot on this Turner Valley and the Burton Creek compressor. So ultimately, it is their contract that we write for them that stipulates, what their hiring percentages and where people should be coming from and whatnot. So we're gonna be working a lot closer with our prime contractors this time as we're back in the community. We have heard from many people that it was a challenging process getting on board with MassTech. And for Preston and I, you know, we come through, we construct these projects, but when they enter into construction, you know, it's a little bit blind for us admittedly at times, and our construction crews take over with the project managers and otherwise, but I'm thankful the community called me on that one and let me know what had happened, so.
No, I appreciate you guys giving it the consideration.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
important to us.
Thank you. Excellent, thank you. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier some of the lessons you've learned, and one of them was the request to plant some extra trees. Can you speak to that a little bit? And I also want to thank you, I read that article, but I thank you for the haste in which you, I know they're not within the town, but friends to the northwest of us around that compressor station did have those concerns, and I thank you very much for handling them. But from that perspective, as you grow and as you expand, obviously environmental issues are becoming more and more paramount. Can you speak to that process a little bit?
The process of planting
Any
trees or?
the environmental concerns that surround the expansion?
Yeah, so for us being federally regulated, our environmental process, and I'm a land guy, so I'll do my best to capture what I hear from our environment folks, but ultimately there is a set of environmental protection standards that the CER mandates. We have to adhere to those. When it comes to the planting, removal of trees, the impact on wetlands, all of that is approved through a multitude of regulatory bodies that ensure that our environmental crews are doing what they're supposed to, and it's all part of our CER application. But as it pertains to those trees in particular, there is a small wetland to the north that did encroach, the boundaries of that wetland encroached into the Turner Valley compressor boundary. So, they can apply for exemptions and changes to that wetland. Ultimately, we have the right to build that compressor there, but it was in reaction to landowners going, you cut those trees down, I now have a clear view of your compressor, the building's bigger than your other ones that were there before, so it was a no-brainer reaction for us to obviously consider a visual mitigation for them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Halday.
Yeah, this is just follow up with Councillor Wilkie. Do we have any numbers back on the number of local jobs generated from this past year's compressor station?
Not yet, no, we're still getting those numbers in right now. Our socio-act group is just pulling everything together, but we're hoping to get those to you as soon as we can before we go to the next stage of our 2023 project, particularly we're doing any chamber events or meeting with you guys, but we're still pulling those together right now.
Okay.
We'll expect an email.
There you go. Any other questions from council? My easy one. How deep do you dig your 48-inch pipe? How far down is it?
Typically about 1.2 to 1.4 meters.
6 feet. Okay. Excellent. Any other questions, council? Good. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming and giving us a presentation. Glad to hear that everything has gone so well for this project and that you have some lessons learned going forward. Really look forward to 1,000 jobs in the area and a potential for expansion, but no, just really good to hear that you guys are doing great as a company and you're moving forward with more projects to help investments in Alberta and across Canada. So, thank you.
And I'm
Thank you very
pleased to
much.
hear that you got feedback from people that our notes and mitigations were well received. That means a lot. We work hard trying to chip away on how to
It's not
help
an easy
people out when they're struggling with our projects.
Yeah,
It's
so
not an easy
really
job.
appreciate it.
Thanks.
I'll go get a few more pipelines built.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Can I just get a motion to accept the presentation as information? Waring gives it, he beat you to it.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
You'll hear from us, by community.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll pass them on.
And can I get an all in favor for that? Excellent, that's carried. Thank you. Gentlemen, feel free to stick around if you like, or you can head her on out, that's totally fine as well. Your jobs are done. 9.2, Westend Governance and Management Framework, Kris Nelson, Urban Systems, why don't you come on up, Mr. Nelson? And Mr. Sharp, you can do the intro again here and segue.
Thanks, Mayor Crane. While Mr. Nelson is getting seated, he's here today to give council an update on the progress being made with respect to the governance options for Westend Regional Sewage Services Commission. As council knows, there's been a subcommittee struck to take a look at those options moving forward, and so Urban Systems has been the consulting group that's been tasked with bringing forward the best possible options.
So thank you. So same thing, you're gonna hit the red button and I activate. Floor is yours, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. To add to Mr. Sharp's intro there, we've been working with the committee, review committee here for the past 6-7 months on looking at different options for the regional governance, and want to walk through council through those. But first, before we get to the preferred option, I want to take a step back and just remind council as to why this kicked off. This has been going on now for a couple of years. I want to remind council as to what launched that, and then look at the different considerations that were considered through the process, and then get to the preferred option, and then happy to answer questions after that. So dating back to April 2017, Westend Commission approached Struck and expressed interest in looking at some different options for governance and management moving forward. There was recognition that there's some staffing needs and succession planning on the horizon at that point, and the notion of some big projects on the horizon to be delivered for Westend, Lagoon, a significant project. Some opportunities maybe to be more efficient on the management administrative side, and then increasingly operational requirements as Alberta environment requirements become more stringent, and or you move forward with future capital projects, the requirements there for operations might be higher. So there's a number of reasons why the discussion was kicked off in 2017, and following that, the board of directors of Struck looked into an initial review of options, and this is in May of 2017, so it was a pretty high level review, looking at what could be possible. They took those back to the Westend in 2017 as well, and then presented to council's December of that year of what, at a higher level, what those options could be moving forward. As a next step coming out of that, Black Diamond applied for a grant application and was successful and received that in April of 2018 to further review those options, move forward on a preferred option, and move towards implementation of what that preferred option is. So at this stage, we're presenting to councils of what that preferred option is from the review committee, and then looking to move forward implementation of that if councils agree. So the intent of this next step was to investigate and identify a preferred approach to governance and management structure for the Westend. Early in 2019, a terms of reference was set up, and that's what established the committee that's reviewing this. The committee's composition includes Turner Valley, Black Diamond, Foothills County, as well as Longview, and that reflects the Quad Regional Partnership and members of Struck. A number of the options were involving Struck, so that was important to have those people at the table as we review and consider these different options. So the process to date, starting middle of 2019, has been about 5-6 months working with the committee, looking at the different options, reporting back on those. Getting feedback from the committee on any gaps that were identified, following back up on that, getting legal and financial advice from different parties that were feeding in to make sure we had a complete picture of what the different options entailed. And now we're into what's showing there is phase 4, which is bringing this back now to the member councils, being Turner Valley, Black Diamond, and sharing what the preferred option is. If councils are comfortable with how that looks, then the next step would be moving towards implementation, which has steps coming back to council for approval. The different options that were reviewed, first off, status quo. If you do nothing, what does that mean? Obviously, dating back to 2017, there was recognition that the status quo moving forward, there were some challenges with that. So, what are the options beyond that? But obviously, understanding what the status quo is today and why or why not, we were from that made sense. So that was an option looked at. Dissolution of the commission, so this would be dissolving the Westend as a commission, and then merging with Struck as a corporation in some form. There's different iterations of that as one corporation, subsidiary corporation that were looked at through that option. Option number 3 was you dissolve the corporation of Struck and you create one single commission. So that would be another option that could be could have been a possibility. And then the fourth option that was looked at was a collaborative service delivery, and this one was really more about co-governance, co-management, but leaving the entities as is today. So you would keep Westend as a commission and Struck as a corporation, but what are ways that you can partner at the governance and management levels to achieve some of those objectives that were identified. So there's a number of considerations, and they largely fell into three buckets. There's the governance and legal side of things, and this range from what are the ministerial requirements, mainly to do with commissions, to ownership structure, board composition, the risk and liability, all the way down to environmental approvals that might be required if you change entities, amalgamation impacts if that was to ever happen in the future, just something to be aware of if there was any impacts. On the financial side, with significant projects on the horizon for the Westend, obviously debt limits, debt servicing, how you access capital, how much you pay for capital, those things are really important, and there's a number of other financial considerations that were thought through. The third one on the management operations side, because this first step really looked at governance structures, the view of looking at the management operations was more about, with one governance structure opposed to another, are we limiting any flexibility of how we can manage and operate these going forward? And it wasn't identifying the best management operations structure moving forward, but more, if we go down this path of this governance structure, is there any limitations on management operations? And that was really the intent of that first step. You just scroll the next one, please. So a number of considerations, and through the exercise with the review committee, a number of those rose to the top as being very important and priority considerations. Governance, autonomy around decision making, obviously very important. Want to make sure that you can control your destiny moving forward with the utility. Just the notion of the decision making being clear, not a overly complex structure or one that's confusing or not clear as to who's making the decisions. From a financial perspective, I already touched on this a little bit, but the ability to access capital from Alberta Capital Finance, so the provincial arm provides a lot of the debt financing for municipalities because of access, but also the rate that you borrow at through an entity like that is important, especially if you have significant capital improvements on the horizon. The ability to deliver on those future capital improvements, so that could be from a capacity perspective, a project management perspective, understanding perspective of what those infrastructure needs might be and what they look like. And the last one was on service delivery, so most of it around efficiencies from a governance and management perspective, as well as from you're hiring contractors and consultants and making sure that as overall utilities, water and wastewater side of things, you're doing that as efficiently as possible. And then the last point, speaking to, at the end of the day, what's the impact to the existing operations, and designing one governance structure impact that more than the others. So going through that, and a lot of detail on the considerations and walking through that with the committee, and again circling back on any gaps that we identified. The preferred option was to move towards a collaborative service delivery model, and to emphasize, this is, again, the entities would stay the same. Struck would remain a corporation, Westend would remain a commission, but you look for synergies with those two entities from a management and governance perspective. In the next slide we'll talk to what that actually means, but really the rationale for this is there's a number of points as to why this was the preferred option. It's by far the simplest option, other than status quo, by far the simplest option to be able to test the benefits of efficiencies and co-governance, co-management without doing significant structural changes. It's relatively low cost. If you can think of, if you dissolved the Westend or the corporation and then switched to one of those entities as a combined service delivery model, that you would have significant legal costs associated with that, significant capacity and resources. You require ministerial approval because of the commission status. So there's a lot of different things that would be required for those other options, and this collaborative service delivery is seen as a very low cost, relatively easy to implement option to be able to test some things. It eliminates potential negative optics of shifting to another governance structure because it's remaining, entities are remaining the same. That really not much is changing. You're trying to become more efficient from a governance and management perspective, and that's a very small step to be able to test if that's effective or not. As I mentioned, the financial side of things, because of improvements on the horizon, the Westend still remaining as a commission under this model has access to Alberta Capital Finance Authority, and that has benefits from a debt limits perspective. because it's a commission, it's a separate entity and doesn't go on to municipalities' books from a debt carrying capacity perspective. It also allows, again, the ability to try and create some efficiencies from a governance perspective, from a management perspective, and operational efficiencies, and could allow, ultimately, as this committee moves forward, if that's the intent of the councils, to create some of those redundancies, around coverage, and obviously longer term operational needs as the infrastructure changes with the Westend. Next slide, please. So what does this actually mean as a first step, anyways? First, it would be establishment of a memorandum of agreement between Turner Valley and Black Diamond, and within that document, it would capture the level of integration, collaboration, and cooperation that's intended for the groups. The intent would be that councillors that are on the Westend board and Struck board be the same councillors, giving those councillors a holistic picture of the utilities overall, allowing for longer range planning, and obviously efficiencies of meetings. Things as simple as meetings, having those back to back, was kind of the intent as a first step from the governance side. Obviously then you have the full picture. There's the ability to be able to be more efficient with your consultants that you're using, with the contractors that you're using for any kind of improvements. And eventually, once this group is established, councillors identified that are working on those boards, councils want to move forward with this, then you start working on, okay, how can we be more efficient on the managing side, and what does that look like when we move forward for succession planning and whatnot. And the last slide here is just implementation approach. So the first on the far left there, this is just showing what we're doing right now and sharing this with council, and also sharing this with Westend and the board, Struck board, as a next step. If councils are comfortable with this and want to keep moving forward, then we would move forward with the creation of the memorandum of agreement. That would be brought back to councils for approval once that's drafted. And then it would be more about the reconfiguration and trying to achieve those synergies where possible. So the first one would be either 2020 in the fall when you assign your committees, or 2021 with the re-election time period, that you look to align your councillors on those two boards to be the same folks moving forward. And either way, timing wise, if it's in 2020 or 2021, that group of councillors could get together and start moving forward on what does that mean from a management perspective now that we've got the governance structure in place and the agreement in place that would reflect what the intent is. That concludes the presentation. Happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Excellent, thank you very much. Well, I'll look to Councillor Waring and Councillor Rabb as members of Westend to lead the questions and speak to the presentation first, and then we'll take questions.
We know the answers.
Oh, you do? You know everything. All right, I know Cindy does, but I know Rab likes to talk. So Rab, if you want to hit your button, Mr. Kris, thank you. Okay, Rab. There you go.
I'd just like to thank Kris and the group that he worked with, the Urban Systems, for taking us through what I thought was a really good process. John and I were both involved in this particular process, and I believe we've got something that works really well. It's fairly simplistic, not that difficult to do. It's a lot less expensive than having to form a new commission or fold up into Shrek. And I think it provides what we're looking for, and that's management and operations. So, we can do that, and we think we can save money in the process. So I hope council considers it a good thing, and leave it at that. And thank you very much for all your hard work, Kris.
Excellent, thank you, Councillor Rabb. Councillor Waring.
Good evening, Kris, thanks for that. Councillor Rabb basically summed up anything I can say regarding this. We had some very interesting discussions. We went very deeply into all the possible aspects to make sure we were online to make the right decision, which I believe we have done. I'm very supportive of the proposal, and I hope council supports us on this. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Hamilton, Holiday, Councillor Holiday. Oh, Rab. There you go. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify the whole same councillors on the Shuck board and Westend, because Westend is only a Black Diamond Turner Valley thing. Is it you would have with Foothills Regional Services Commission, we do sort of the same thing. We have a landfill meeting, and then and then right afterwards there's a water, Frank Lake committee, right? But we dismiss councillors, right? Is that what's happening here? So Longview, MD, those people would just get dismissed, so it would still just be Black Diamond, Turner Valley councillors, it's not going to be any voting from Longview or the MD?
Just Turner Valley Black Diamond.
Just Turner Valley Black Diamond.
Yep, okay, Rab will clarify for you. Go ahead, Rab.
Yeah, I think John said it very well. We did go very deep in this. We looked at the possibility of forming a commission, joining Shrek and all the rest of it. At the end of the day, this was the decision we made, and what we thought is that if by chance we happen to get the county to manage it as well as it did with Shrek, okay, for an example, well then it would be advantage. And you have the managers in to deal with Shrek, they may as well deal with Westend. So you may have your Shrek meeting at 1 o'clock and 3 councillors from our town are at that meeting. At the end of that time, let's say the meeting lasted till 3, at that which time the Westend would meet. Okay, that only involves 2 councillors, but the three that are on Shrek would be, 2 of those would have to be on Shrek as well, just because you have common councillors and you don't have to bring 2 new people, otherwise it kind of reduces, it defeats the purpose of efficiency. So we look at it as an efficiency from the point of view of town. It's also an efficiency in terms of management. If by chance we get this county to do the management, doesn't have to happen, but it could. So I think that's what we're thinking. So, but yes, everybody else is involved. It only involves 4 councillors, 2 from Black Diamond, 2 from Turner Valley. Everybody else would be gone, except for the managers and operators.
Excellent, thank
Does that
you.
make sense?
Clear. That's good. Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you, pretty clear presentation. The one thing I'm just trying to wrap my head around, it feels like you've unlocked a magic way to make things more efficient without us having to pay lawyers, and I appreciate that. Appreciate the work that went into that. Now the flip side of that, I guess, is we haven't necessarily gone into a bunch of detail on the other options here. So just so we understand, what are we missing out on by not going down the dissolution route or the form a single commission route, right? Are we, is there anything that we're giving up by taking this path as opposed to one of those more drastic paths?
I'm gonna go to Waring.
Well, you have to remember that Shrek is owned by Black Diamond 45%, Turner Valley 45%, and the county 10%.
Yeah, it's illegal.
Westend is 50-50, Turner Valley, Black Diamond.
Yeah.
So there's no interest from the county in the ownership of Westend. If you go into merge Westend into Shrek, all of a sudden you've got somebody who's making decisions on Westend who doesn't have an ownership.
Yeah.
Likewise, if you put Shrek back as a commission and merge the 2 commissioners, it's the same thing in reverse. By keeping the 2 separate but trying to find one management organisation for both, we will definitely save a lot of efficiencies, we'll gain a lot of efficiencies, and we should be able to save a certain amount of costs and overhead. And looking further forward to the future, if and when the Westend expansion takes place, the level of the operators needed at that time is significantly higher in experience and in training and certification of people we have at the moment. There isn't anybody within the current organisation that has that ability. They can be trained, but also we have the problem that several key people in this organisation are due to retire within the next year to 18 months.
Yeah, I guess
we took that into account as well when we looked at what we were doing.
Thank you, Councillor Rice.
just a quick follow-up.
Yeah, sure, go
I guess I get those benefits, those make sense to me. I'm just trying to understand, if I think about it from the other side, are we missing out on anything? Is there an advantage to this merging or single commission approach that we're not getting by taking this approach? Because I like what you guys have done. Anything that cuts legal costs and makes it cleaner is a nice thing.
I'm gonna grab this one. One of the things, Councillor Waring missed that I know he was, telling me about earlier, was the borrowing capacity. It was one of the main
Yeah.
sells
Speak
on
to
this.
that.
So that really makes the difference for me,
Yeah.
is our accessibility to the funds, whereas if it's a corporation, we lose that ability. So I think that's the big piece that we're gaining by the cooperation and collaboration method. So, Councillor Rudd, you wanna clarify that?
I do. I don't think we lose anything.
Yeah.
We save some money, but we don't lose anything. And if you do fold up and become part of SHRUC, you know, Council Waring commented why, that would be a problem. But also, it costs a lot of money, and then once it's done, it's done.
Yeah.
See, if we amalgamate the way, if we join the way we're talking about with what Kris proposes for us, if we join that way, we could always enter into, always join SHRUC 3 years down the road if we think that there's some problems. But in the interim, the benefits we have, number one, we still have our assets.
Yeah.
You know, SHRUC, we don't have our assets. SHRUC owns our assets. We don't have a water plant or anything else anymore, okay? This way, we still maintain all our assets in both Turner Valley and Black Diamond. We can borrow at a lot better rates, and we have a big project going, that's huge for me as well. We can still benefit by the cooperation in terms of contractors and other things that, the engineers, whatever, that we have to be used because of the coexistence. So I don't think we lose anything, but to me, we gain a whole lot. That's my opinion.
I like that. And less lawyer costs.
Nice. Councillor Halday. And then Hampton.
You mentioned MD, because they manage SHRUC, they would be looked at, obviously, as a potential manager in the
Yep.
future. But I don't know what they do as far as large-scale sewage systems, and if they've got the
Frankly.
experience.
Frankly.
But will you also be looking at Okotoks, High River, other options as a commission, or are you more focusing on what you have?
Councillor Waring.
I like that. One of the things we as Westend have done separately from this study is go out to third parties to see if there's any interest for them to manage and operate Westend. The response was quite negative because it's such a small thing. One, we did the analysis of setting up SHRUC and running SHRUC with one of the municipalities that was involved in the organisation. Again, that was the most economic way to go than going out with a third party with no interest in the project. We're all committed, because we own these entities, to keep the prices to a minimum, to keep the costs to a minimum, because basically we're only charging ourselves. If we go out to a third party with no ownership interest, it's a profit type setup. And if we're going to go to another municipality like Okotoks, they might want to do it as a non-for-profit type approach, but we've already got 3 people in-house who would be interested to do that anyway. The other advantage with the county, they have a lot of experience of running these wastewater treatment plants. They've got them in other parts of the county. They've got them over in near to High River. They've got them up north of their area. They've also got these people who've got the experience to run the bigger plants. So if it is decided, and it's not been decided who's going to run this, if Black Diamond want to turn around and say we're quite happy to keep running it until such time as we're happy to give it up, that's fine. That'll come out of the next round of discussions if both councils agree to move forward.
Thank you. Councillor Hampton, final comment?
It's kind of a follow-up to Councillor Holliday's question. I'm just wondering if there's any financial, or any funds, left in the grant for additional research into management or operations. I appreciate what Councillor Waring has just outlined, but just have we gone out for a formal bid or anything like that, and just wondering if there is funds available in the grant to do that.
We did go to a number of companies and ask them would they bid to do this, and they turned us down, as it wasn't a large enough operation, they weren't interested. And just for your information, Okotoks, who had a third party running a wastewater treatment facility, have cancelled that contract and now they're running it themselves. Again, because of cost. Any of these third party companies are only doing it to make money.
Excellent. I was just gonna give you the floor, Kris, just to walk us through that timeline and approvals again.
Yeah, through the chair, there is some money left in the grant, and that was advantageous, I think, for, you know, as we were looking forward to implementation, and, you know, to the comment earlier from the councillor about the legal costs, those can add up when you're starting to change entities and structures and those kind of things, so this option, the grant is intended to cover the development of that agreement, so that would be some lawyer fees involved with that, the review of that, obviously, and then facilitation, of urban systems, with those councillors moving forward to looking at how management could work moving forward. So that's the intent of the remainder of the grant, is to implement that approach.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much, sir, for coming and presenting to us tonight. Thank you for the committee for doing all the fine work. I know you guys spent a lot of time on this, and to hear Councillor Rab say he really enjoyed it, that's some kudos right there, I'll tell you. So thank you very much, and we'll take this here forward for council consideration. Okay. Thank you.
Need a motion to accept the...
Yeah.
Your motion? I'll give you that. You want me to speak?
Oh,
louder?
sure, I'll have you speak it.
Motion to accept the presentation from Kris for information. But one question on that, do we need to make a motion to move forward on this?
That's what I was gonna get to next. Mr. Sharp?
Yeah, relating to Councilor Ring's question, I don't think there's any further action that needs to be mandated at this time. We already have a resolution of council to proceed and investigate the options. Kris laid out kind of the next steps, and one of which is discussing an MOU between councils. So I think we're good there, we're just accepting this update as information for now.
Well, don't we have to say yes, we support it, or not, to move ahead with the memorandum of understanding?
I thought so.
I'd be fine with that, just to put us on the record as in support.
Kris?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I think because of the terms of reference, we're good to keep going.
Okay.
But if council likes to do that, that's fine.
I'll take two from you.
Yeah.
So your first one's to accept for information, all in favor? Excellent. And Rab?
Well, John's on a roll.
Okay.
Ugh. My button's gonna break. Motion to direct administration to prepare an MOU with Black Diamond for continuing this project.
Assuming they go forward.
MOA?
MOA.
Memorandum of Agreement. Okay.
I said understanding is my fault.
I told you I shouldn't have made that.
I messed you up, John.
Yeah,
We don't need
Okay,
what he said.
there you go. Oh, go ahead.
Can I
Doug.
make a suggestion?
Sure.
A basic motion that council supports
Yes.
moving forward,
Yes,
with the preferred option.
That's exactly what Councillor Ring said.
that's exactly what you said. I said word
I
for
almost heard myself say
I
it.
know, it's ringing in my ears. Excellent. Any comments from council? The motion, Heather spoke from John's words. Excellent. All right, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, that's good. I'm glad that we accept that and move on down the timeline route. Again, Kris, thank you for attending, and we will see you later. Moving on in the agenda, reports 10.1, Chief Administrative Officer's Report, Mr. Sharp.
Nothing to update council at this time.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, 10.2, Staff Report, Turner Valley Municipal Enforcement. This is our year-end council update. Mr. Sharp, if you'd like to lead this off.
Thanks, Mayor Crane. So in the interest of time, we've presented the Municipal Enforcement Annual Report to council for its review. We're just going to present it as information unless council has any specific questions on that. We have Trevor here to answer any specific questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Council, you've got the package in front of you outlining all the data, and it's very nice to see 5 years of track data. So thank you for supplying that for council. Any questions, concerns, or comments? Councillor Hamilton.
In looking at the table for the infraction types, other bylaw, would that be things like, parking on your property violations, or unsightly premises violations, or trailer violations? I'm just wondering what would fall under that category.
Good evening, Trevor.
Good evening. Through the chair to the council member, these violations would be subject as unsightly complaints, violations under that, vandalism, trespassing, stuff where we don't see a great deal of charges laid. Just for the simple fact we don't deal with, let's say, trespassing very often. So having it its own category would take up probably too much of this graph as it is, or this table as it is. We go too far into detail.
Okay, I've got a follow-up to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, for the two that you have noted there, is that you had 2 calls?
No,
Or you wrote 2, or there was 2 infractions?
through the chair to the council member, that would be 2 charges laid.
Okay. So 2 in the whole year?
2 in the whole year. I think it's important to note here that if we look at the traffic bylaw, with our traffic bylaw right now, we're currently developing a new one, or implementing a new one here. However, with our traffic bylaw, we can also use the Traffic Safety Act to lay charges that are charges that are very similar to our bylaw. It's important to understand that if we lay a bylaw charge, the municipality has to pay for our own ad hoc lawyer for prosecutions. If a charge is laid under the Traffic Safety Act, it's done through a provincial prosecutor. So we're getting the same result, we're just not classifying it as a bylaw charge because it is laid provincially.
Okay. Good. Councillor Rudd.
Yeah, Officer Bowman, 24-hour suspensions, I see you had 0 in 2019, and that could have been suspensions for either alcohol and or drugs, could it not? So obviously what I guess I'm trying to say is, we didn't see a big impact on this number because of the marijuana bylaw, or the marijuana law.
Through the chair to Councilor Rob, that'd be correct. The decriminalization wasn't what we expected, thankfully. So we're very pleased to see that.
Yep, yep.
Councillor Gordon.
I'm done.
So, speak to the AFRAX radio system. I know some of the concerns we've had with our municipal enforcement officers having the support with the RCMP, if you will, a radio dial away. I know we can't speak to the details of that pilot project. I am aware of some of the elements of that with one of the other committees I'm on. Tell us a bit of a time frame, hopefully when everything will be finalized regarding that.
Through the chair to Councilor Gordon, at this point right now, the Solicitor General has not given us a lot of detail on what this pilot project is going to entail. I have not heard how it's going to be set up or structured.
So Turner Valley's not part of it then?
No, the communities involved in that are the town of Okotoks and the county of Grand Prairie and Grand Prairie City. I'm not sure how long they're going to run that pilot project before they make a decision on how that's going to be rolled out or deployed throughout the province, or if it even will.
Excellent, thank you. And as usual, we got 223 speeding violations, which is up 100% from last year's 106, so it's good to see enforcement is working. I have no qualms with speeders getting caught in our community, especially in our children's playground areas. So thank you for being diligent, yourself and Officer O'Leary, in taking that on and keeping those numbers where they need to be. So any other comments, questions, concerns? We're going into next phase, but I will ask you this. Are you aware of the Red Deer Capture program, which is in reference to video recordings from residents? Just a question.
Okay, I am aware of programs such as that. Throughout, there's different municipalities throughout the province that are actually running that. It's a program through the RCMP where people with home surveillance can sign up, and if anything happens in their area, again, the RCMP have these people on on a list, and they can contact them for any surveillance video they may have that may lead to investigative leads into a matter. Traditionally, that is run by, because it is criminal, is done by the RCMP themselves.
Thank you. I only asked that because we recently had the theft of the truck in Seclusion Valley. Luckily, they caught them, and it was in CBC. They were caught in a doghouse by a dog, so that's pretty good. But it just comes back to something that I referenced to council and administration a few months back, that I want to look at implementing that exact same system that Red Deer used as a pilot project within Turner Valley. So just knowing that you know about it,
Yeah,
just
no,
adds more validity.
I'm quite aware of it.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all you do for our community, and please be safe.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, Councillor Gordon gives us a motion to accept for information. All in favor? Thank you. All right, moving on. 11, administrative responses. 11.1, we have no items. 12.1, administrative inquiries. We have deferred notice of motion through, or inquiry from Councillor Gordon, and we're gonna wait for more information on that, so we're gonna move on from that. 13, bylaws and policies. Bylaw 20-1100, removal of designation of municipal reserve. Back in front of us. Mr. Malinka, you have the floor again.
Thank you, Mayor Crane. So before you, you have bylaw 20-1100 for the removal of designation of municipal reserve from Lot 8 MR Block 21 Plan 821-1156. On December 2nd, Council did declare that the subject lands to be surplus and direct administration to prepare the lands for sale. As part of that land disposition, the subject lands must first have that municipal reserve designation removed from them in order to dispose of the asset as per the Municipal Government Act. With first reading being given on January 6th of 2020, we're now seeking second and third and final reading for the bylaw following the public hearing we just had a while ago this evening. So with that, options available to council are option 1 being the council gives second and third reading to bylaw 20-1100. Option 2, the council provide administration with alternate direction, and administration's recommendation is obviously option 1 to for council to give second and third reading of the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rapp.
I would like to make a motion that council gives second reading for bylaw 20-1100.
Thank you. That is correct numbering. I was just double checking. Any comments, questions, concerns? Councillor Gordon?
Yeah, I'll just make sure that I let us know that I fully support this. You followed our direction with doing something positive with some of our reserve land, and releasing that is perfect.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing no other questions, all in favor? All right, excellent. Can I get a third motion, or a second motion for a third reading? Councillor Hamilton.
I will give third reading, or do I have to give consideration, or can I just give?
No, we're good to go.
The council give third and final reading to bylaw 20-1100.
Excellent, thank you. Would you like to speak to that, or?
No, I'll just echo my fellow councillor that this is something we definitely propose direction, and thank you for putting it together, and I'm in full support.
Excellent, thank you. Seeing no questions, comments, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Malika. All right, old business. 14.1, presentation of Councillor Warren's notice of motion, RE service delivery regarding snow plowing and removal. Loading up here. Mr. Sheriff?
I will defer to Councillor Ware.
Oh, goody.
Oh, goody, yes. Yeah, okay, Councillor Ware, there you go.
Okay, under the current bylaw, the town has no authority or power, call it what you will, to tow vehicles or find vehicles that don't move during a snow event. Even though they've had warning, just nothing happens. Moving snow, as we all know, is reasonably expensive business. It's time consuming. if you don't get it done right the first time, you've got to go back. Many municipalities have this bylaw in place. The fact that it's in place doesn't mean that we're going to be mean and nasty, but we just hope that there's something there that will encourage people to comply with requests. We also appreciate, I'm sure, that there will be circumstances where people cannot comply, and I would trust that when administration put together a draft of this bylaw, that this will be taken into account, such as handicapped people or people who've got no alternative parking, that other arrangements can be made. Yeah, I think that just about covers it.
Council, any comments? Wilkie first.
Yeah, I support the spirit of this motion. I mean, if we're gonna be moving snow, we need to be doing it in the most efficient way possible, and this to me just makes sense from people's use of people's time and our town resources. I would ask, just, I know there's a lot of examples out there, if we can see that, if we could take into consideration how other people handle that, hardship aspect of things, like what are the rules for where people park, I just want some thought given to that. But at the end of the day, I wanna see this happen if we're gonna be moving snow. Let's make it as efficient as we can.
Question of clarity, Councillor Gordon?
Question I have as well, I do agree that there needs to be some action taken. It was seen on our street, where because the vehicles weren't moved, proper equipment couldn't get in, and it was delayed for almost 3 full days, I think, before they got one of the sections just north of where I live. So I understand that. The current policy makes reference to clearing the alleyway if the alleyway is over something like 20 centimeters.
12 inches.
So I'm wondering if that needs to be reviewed as well as an option, that before the actual equipment goes in to remove with the side-by-sides, if a plow or the grader can go through to clear the alleyway to allow residents at least access to get off street prior to the ticketing enforcement be made.
That's a great idea for efficiency, for sure. Councillor Rudd?
I would like to make the recommendation that it has for us, the council direct administration to investigate the best options to implement a plan or process to tow or ticket vehicles and not remove vehicles from the street following snow event. And further directs administration to provide a report back to council at the February 18th regular council meeting outlining these options. Is that sufficient time, 2 weeks? And I think that was good points by both Councillor Gordon and Councillor Wilkie as far as things that might be helpful.
Thank you for that motion. Councillor Hamilton?
I'm wondering if we're looking into creating a bylaw for towing for snow removal, if we should also consider street sweeping, cause that's an expense that we incur every year.
Yes.
Vehicles are constantly left behind, and I'm thinking maybe at this point we could address that at the same time. And maybe also one step further, abandoned vehicles could be included in that. There's quite a few around town that haven't moved in years that are on streets. They're not moved for the snow removal, they're not moved for the street sweeping. Maybe we address that at the same time.
Maybe Heather might be in our time if we start throwing all the other stuff.
Yeah, right.
We covered a whole bunch of.
It's good. I absolutely love what Councillor Hamilton said, because I was gonna bring up those same points of abandoned vehicles. I drive by them every day. So, fully supported this motion. Councillor Sharp. Mr. Sharp, go ahead.
So as we start to add some things into this, we're gonna need a little bit more time.
Yeah.
I don't know if that meets with Councillor Waring's intent here. This is his motion and notice of motion. But if we wanna take a look at street sweeping, abandoned vehicles or other, we're gonna need some more time to do that, so.
Unless you wanna just do the snow clearing now and add that on sometime down the road.
Well, we're happy, the administration's happy to take a look at it comprehensively. I think, street sweeping, it falls in line with, snow clearance in many ways. So we can do that, but we'll need more than 2 weeks, that's all.
Fair enough.
Okay. Councillor Waring?
Yeah, I've got no problem with extending the time to look at this if we're going to look at it in a more complete manner. I did think that the vehicles that are abandoned would come under a different bylaw,
Unsightly.
under unsightly, because we did talk about this before, and to be honest, I didn't think about street cleaning. So I'm quite happy if administration can put other things into this, and if it takes a little longer, well, if we're all ready and set up for next year's first snow event, we move forward positively.
Right, I totally agree. Councillor Rob, you wanna finish this off?
Yeah, I'm prepared to take that, last part of the motion off. So just to, from the street sweeping following a snow event, instead of, and further directs administration provided by February 18th, that's not a fair timeline if you're gonna incorporate quite some other things, so if I just took the back off that motion off, and you could, hopefully get it in by the early in March or later in
Why
March.
not April?
Yeah, that would give you some time to do the other two at the same time. Do you need direction on that though? Do you need direction on
Friendly amendment.
a friendly amendment to that motion? I think you do. So friendly amendment, does anybody wanna make that? Councillor Hamilton, you had the two good additions, I think. Go ahead.
Just clarification first from our CAO, would the abandoned vehicle be better managed under unsightly premises?
I think so, yeah, I do. I think one of the things administration has been looking at is a broader analysis of some of those things, unsightly premises and vehicles on street,
Okay.
etc. So if we could separate that out and just keep this to street sweeping, snow removal for the end of March, in some form of a friendly amendment, we could bring something back to you.
So just add
So I'll give a friendly amendment to include street sweeping with Councillor Rob's motion regarding snow removal.
and amend it until the end of second meeting in April, second meeting in March. Second meeting in March, is that correct? Or
I'm
first
just
meeting,
gonna check with Mr. Mike
or
here.
first meeting in February, or first meeting in March.
4 weeks. Second meeting in March.
Second meeting in March, there it is.
And, good, thank you, and Councillor Holiday.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we also need to add in there, anything about the alleyway, re-looking at the alleyway clearing.
Should go into snow policy.
That's
That
all.
could go to
That'll be
You
part of
know, to
the
look at that, we don't need that. Okay, I'm just wondering, on the abandoned vehicles, is there not, I'm assuming if people are parking them for months on end, they're not insured, is there any issue? Is there a municipal enforcement angle that could be looked into and take care of that?
Mr. Chair.
Manette is one.
Good evening, council. Through Mayor Crane. Yes, that is something that's followed up regularly, and any of the so-called abandoned vehicles are actually registered and licensed. So they're not technically abandoned. They've not moved for a long time. If there is an issue in terms of snow removal, then we are trying to get in ahead of that. But currently, they're not meeting the definition of abandoned. So part of the issue is that if one were to move that vehicle 3 inches, 3 feet, it would be considered moved. So that's the part that needs to be worked out, and some research is required.
I wonder, okay, no, that's a conversation for later, but we're gonna let administration do their job, come back with recommendations, and we can always ask for extras at that time. So, moving forward, everyone's good?
Should we hear the motion again?
Yeah, go ahead, Ms.
Basically, it's an amending motion to the main motion, to include street cleaning and bringing the report back to the second meeting in March. So we'll need a vote on that, and then we'll need to vote on the main motion.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so, friendly amendment motion first, everyone in favor? Excellent, now that is combined to the main motion, and everyone in favor. Perfect. Okay, thank you. Let me just slide up here. Construction of path, 15.1 I believe we're on to now, is that correct? Yes, it is. New business, 15.1, notice of motion, Councillor Waring. We're gonna give it to you again, man, you get to talk a lot tonight.
It's like a half
You're
time.
gonna have to take a week off after this. Go ahead.
Okay, as we all are aware, the land swap agreement between the town and the Turner Valley Golf and Country Club and Carner Gateway is now completed. because of this, we don't have any trail on the south side of the river or pathway system that's open to the public. This request, this motion is to direct administration to work with the Turner Valley Golf Club, who I understand are open to this discussion, to provide an alternative pathway that will get residents and visitors and people from Black Diamond as well as Turner Valley around the golf course in the season, to help with the liability issues and also to give us a little bit of a nicer recreational type trail. I think the way this is worded, that the negotiations with the golf course should sort of include the fact that the existing road pathway remained open to residents on a year-round basis until such residents and visitors and etc., until such time as the proposed alternative route is up and running. And I've given the timeline of that for opening of the season in 2021, because I believe we could get a pathway up and running by then. It might not be tarmacked, but it would definitely be usable and safe.
Excellent. Thank you. Comments from council? No, I just love to comment because Waring brings such good comments.
It's notice of motion anyway.
Excellent. Perfect, thank you. Notice of motion accepted. 15.2, actually before we go on to 15.2, I just want to let you know, the reason I asked Officer Bowman about the capture program is because I did bring it to an intermunicipal joint steering committee meeting in terms of just an average discussion with the sergeant. So they are going to bring back some of that information, but in light of recent events, I thought it more relevant to bring that forward sooner rather than later. So you'll see a notice of motion from me. I'd love to have it written for tonight, but I want to get that program here and give the RCMP the teeth to nail as many charges as possible to the criminals that come into our communities and stalk our residents. It's deplorable to me, and if you can have more ammunition, save them time, it's perfect. So anyway, you'll get a notice of motion next meeting for me for that program. Moving on, 15.2, Old Man River Regional Planning Commission, Alberta Community Partnership ACP grant application. Mr. Sharp. Straightforward. Where?
So,
Thank you, Mr. Malik.
I'm not used to having it.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yes, before you is just a request for support. We, back in 2018, we basically retained Old Man River Regional Planning Commission to provide us with their GIS program mapping software, the interface we have. Their system essentially it's a bit out of date. They want to move over to what's referred to as an Esri system, which is similar to what we were on before. It will expand our capabilities with our current program a fair amount. I mean, there's definitely some tie-ins with capital asset management and that's exciting for us. However, in order to do that, there's a cost associated with it. So in cooperation or in concert with the town of Coaldale, the Old Man River Commission is seeking an ACP grant for $97,000. Because there's 45 member municipalities involved on the GIS side of things, they're asking for all the municipalities to get support from council to put in that grant. So while Coaldale's the lead and it's in concert with Old Man, we'd just be committing our support by having council accept this and acknowledge and support it today. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I get a motion to that effect. Councilor Wilson.
Do you want,
There you go.
yeah, I'll make a motion that council support Town of Turner Valley in participating in the application for the 2020 Old Man River Region GIS Enhancement Project sponsored by Coaldale under the intermunicipal collaboration component of the Alberta Community Partnership Grant.
Perfect, thank you. Any comments? Councillor Rapp, and then I'll go Wilkie.
I have one. There's no financial implications anticipated at this time. That always makes me nervous.
Through the mayor, I didn't highlight it or bold it, if that matters.
I spotted though, just to say.
Yeah, no, sorry, not trying to set anything up or to, cloud it with some secrecy. The Old Man River Commission has been working on this upgrade for a number of months. We were hoping to actually have it before the new year, but it's taken a little time, longer than expected to roll out. And what they're looking at is, I guess, the grant's available in 2020, so they're seeking it. We missed out a number of years ago. They also sought an ACP and received an ACP grant to run aerial photos. So there's definite benefits for them to run through these grants and get them, and they benefit a lot of municipalities, in our case 45. So yes, they've never come to us and said, sign on, support it, or we're going to send you the check. It's assumed, and our understanding is if they're unsuccessful, they're still going to eat that cost. We already have our invoice for 2020 for JS services. It hasn't increased other than 1% jump because the population changes. So we should be covered for 2020.
That was my concern, I guess, if they go to a new system, it may very well, we just bought this back in 17 or 18, I think. So I'm just thinking if they're gonna upgrade this, then will they charge us for a new system, or do you think it's just gonna be maintained as per usual?
In our discussions with the Old Man Commission, is no, they're not looking to send us a bill for anything.
Okay.
It was sort of acknowledged, and they took that initiative late last year to run it through. The grant, if it's available, bonus for them, I think, but we're not given any indication that we're gonna be asked for a hit at some point in the future.
Okay. Okay.
Go Councillor Wilkie, then Gordon.
Councillor Rapp covered my penny pinching as well, so I think that answered it well, as long as there's no financial obligation of the
Okay, Councillor Gordon?
Yeah, so you actually opened up a question for me. Aerial photos, GIS, do they support them for our town?
Through the mayor's clarity, what do you mean by supportive?
Like, would they provide them to, like, because we're partnering with them, can we have them say, hey, we want some updated aerial photos of the town of Turner Valley and our community?
Actually, through the mayor, what we can thank is we can thank Foothills. 'Cause we just recently were given or handed over the 218 air photos that Foothills flew for their county.
Nice.
And both Black Diamond and Turner Valley were able to jump on that at no cost to us. So while, as I alluded to earlier, Old Man had done a flyover for the area a couple of years back, they don't have one planned right now. The overhaul of the system was where they were focusing their attention this year next, or last year and this year. Because we just had the data brought in about a month ago. It's there, it's already on our mapping if you want to go look for it. So we go all the way, I believe it's from 2002 now to, I think it's June of 2018 now. So yes, if you're into the air photos, definitely take a look. It's quite a bit different from our 215 stuff we were relying on for quite a few years.
Thank you very much. We have a motion on the floor yet? Oh, Councillor Holiday. I was just thinking, because I want to make a motion right after this, so, okay, go.
Just follow up on those photos, 218 ones, will those help us, I'm assuming there's some sort of approvals that's gonna have to happen for development of Arrowhead Park area, anything along the river, are those photos, would those work for us? Then, I know anytime you develop or do anything near the river, or pathways near the river, I would assume there'd have to be some approval, maybe, no?
If we're engaging or playing around on the shoreline or actually going into the shoreline, yes, we'll have maybe Alberta environment approvals to deal with. In response to the question, does the 218 air photos help us anyway? We have flood mapping already in the JS system. That mapping overrides any aerial photos we have, so it's a benefit. And we'll see that information being shared also in the land use bylaw in months to come as well, and made available. But in terms of development approvals and that, I'm not sure if the air photos really provide any guidance other than just give us some context.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Who made the motion on that one?
I did.
Excellent. All in favor of the motion? Perfect. Coming out of that, I suppose I'd make a motion, or I'm just gonna look at you and you're gonna either nod or no. Can we replace that 2007 photo with the updated 2018, that map? Okay.
Does it cost?
There's a cost, that's why I'm saying you want a motion, cause I really am sick of looking at that.
Ask Jamie.
Good.
Noted.
Yeah, noted. Excellent.
Yeah, especially when I went to town,
Right?
it's white, eh?
There you go. It'll look cleaner and.
There goes your bonus.
Okay,
There go the reels.
2 seconds here, guys, this thing, just, let them, okay. Alright, so that's covered. 15.3. Community grant application, Foothills, Permaculture Conference. That's a straightforward one right there. Ms. McClellan, would you like to speak to it? Sure.
Good evening again.
You,
Sure. The request,
there you go, go ahead.
thank you. The request is from a local group that's planning a conference that typically attracts approximately 100 people who are in attendance to learn all about permaculture. For those that aren't familiar, it's really an interesting science. It essentially talks about how environments can work together. So it's natural habitat, human habitat, and then teaching. I think they've got, I can't remember how many, I think it's 20 of these workshops that will be occurring. They've booked up the campground already, and certainly the Flare and Derrick. And this will be the 3rd year that it's hosted here in Turner Valley, and they take turns around the province, but apparently they'd want it to come back to Turner Valley. So the assistance from the council community support fund would assist in offsetting some of the costs involved. They are seeking sponsorship and other finances. At the moment, I have questioned in terms of their reporting. There's approximately $1,000 profit, but that is going back into some of the things that haven't been covered that they were unsure of. So there was a little bit of tweaking on the budget, and it would go back into supporting the conference, and anything from additional expenses required for materials, supplies, speaker gifts, that type of thing, volunteer recognition.
Absolutely. Perfect, thank you. Can I get a council motion? I'll make it.
I can give you that.
Oh.
If you are
Yeah, no,
supposed
you
to
go
make a
ahead.
motion.
No, I just love this, I love this setup, this permaculture conference. It is really cool.
Well,
And
you
we
go
have,
ahead, go ahead.
so I'll give a motion, I'm going to anyway. I give a motion that we support the contribution to the Southern Alberta Permaculture Conference in the amount of $500. And as the maker of the motion, I'll speak to it. This conference is so unique, and it falls right in line with Back to Nature, really. But Barb Hasenfeld is a world-renowned permaculturist, and that is what is so wild about our area. Some of the talent that we have here, and we don't exploit it enough. And this is an opportunity to really exploit some of the professionals that we have that do things that aren't just everyday occurrences. So I really appreciate you bringing this to council, and I wish them all the best. Usually we've supported it by actually sending someone from council to attend. So by all means, if you guys want to go, sign up, but we're not going to support it for you from our pockets.
They provided it free.
I'd like to go.
They provided it for free.
There
It
you go.
says you can go, it
Oh,
says,
see, there you go, it's free. Perfect. I didn't even read that fine print.
it says you can,
Page 57.
council can come up.
Page 57, yeah. Okay, anyway, any other comments?
No.
All in favor?
Yep.
Excellent, thank you. General correspondence, we have no items. Correspondence action considered, we have 2 here. We have Bull River Basin request.
I need to make a question on that.
Yes, please. So we have a letter here that I received as mayor from the Bull River Basin Council regarding watershed planning and advisory council. So go ahead.
Question I have.
Question?
I have that could potentially lead to a motion. Mr. Erwin Braun here has respectfully requested that we appoint a representative to the Bull River Basin Council. And is there any reason we haven't been part of that up to this time?
Yeah, I was the rep on the previous one.
We dropped it though.
Hit your mic there and I'll light you up. There you go.
Yeah, I was the rep on this on the previous council. I attended the meetings, it was very useful. That time I wasn't involved in Shrug or in Westend. Now we dropped the committee when the new council was established. cost-saving endeavours. And I still believe to attend these things is very useful, especially with the problems in the Sheep River and the impact that it's having on our approvals for water and for wastewater.
Thank you, Councillor Waring and Councillor Gordon. It comes with a budget implication,
Yeah, I understand that.
obviously.
I think it's wise though.
Councillor Wilkie?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask more about the second line after that, consider including DRBC in your annual budget deliberation. Do we know anything about what the impact of that is? Cause yes, it would be great to be at the table and hear these decisions, but it's tough to make that, decision. It sounds like it's beyond per diem, right?
Direct administration for cost.
Yeah, a direct
analysis.
administration for more information, I think would be helpful.
Let's make that motion.
Let's do it.
I'll make that motion.
Slide it in there.
All right, I'll make the motion that we direct administration to review the costs associated with a counselor being appointed to the BRBC.
Perfect. Excellent. Any comments, concerns? I think it's a great idea and a great motion. Let's get the information and then we can make a good decision.
BD out of that.
BD have a
Right,
rep?
two, I think they might have two.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, perfect. All right, all in favor of the motion then? Thank you. Might be as easy as asking Black Diamond how much they spend. Okay, 17.2, Alberta Order of Excellence, request for nominations.
I have a direction for you on this one too.
Sure, go ahead, Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, if administration would reach out to the Alberta Order of Excellence and advise them that Mayor Crane is now our mayor, that would be great.
Yeah, I suppose I noticed that, yeah. In regards to the letter, if I don't see anything, it's the Order of Excellence.
Receive for information.
Yeah, I just wanted to
I'll
read
make
it.
the motion.
You good? Okay. Motion to receive as information and shut me up. Okay. Would you like to comment on that?
No, go ahead.
You're good?
You can,
Okay.
you can still read it if you like.
No, that's okay. Won't waste your time. Okay, Councillor Rob makes a motion to accept for information. All in favor? Okay, there you go. Excellent, thank you. And committee boards, correspondence, thank you guys for doing that, actually. Committee boards, correspondence and minutes, we have 18.1 Sheep River Regional Utility Corporation. Councillor Hamilton, some minutes to adopt here for you. Rep, get your,
Sorry.
oh, sorry, we'll go Todd and then we'll go to you, Len.
Maybe just to let Councillor Hamilton off the hook here, so all these minutes have been minutes have been approved and adopted by Schruck. We're just, they were straggling, a little bit late coming in, so we're just bringing them onto the record for council.
Yeah.
Okay, so certainly if Councillor Hamilton or Councillor Holiday or Councillor Waring want to give an update on Schruck activities, they're more than welcome to, but obviously these go back to the 9th September of last year. So.
There you go. Councillor Hamilton?
I just had a quick question about Schruck minutes. We do not post them on the Town of Turner Valley site, they're available on the Schruck website, is that correct? Okay. So for a quick update, we didn't have a meeting in January, we're meeting, February?
Bi-monthly.
Yeah. Bi-monthly, so nothing really to report at this point.
Perfect.
Receive for
Excellent,
information.
and that's correct, and as kind of Mr. Sharp said, it's, we're just tidying up the 2019 so that it's all together, neat and tidy. So, can I get a motion, please, yeah?
I'll give you the motion that we accept, the Sheep River Regional Utility Corporation meeting minutes from the November 28th, 2019 AGM, the November 28th, 2019 organizational meeting, and the September 9th, October 17th, November 28th, 2019 regular business meetings as information.
Excellent, thank you. All in favor? Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. And Foothills Regional Services Landfill Commission, we're essentially doing the same exercise. Councillor Holiday, if you would like to speak to that right quick. Councillor Hamilton, you're late. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add on that, Chuck, that's actually saving on per diems because we've moved to bi-monthly, so we now have 3 counselors, 6 less meetings, which
Good.
saves a little bit. Landfill, not much, we're still waiting on the hydrovac, and we had a great learning moment about not accidentally using copyrighted photos on your landfill Facebook page. There are photographers that like to make money off of that, and they will find you and send their lawyer after you. They hide their copyrights in the corner, and then they look for you. So it happens. And once again, minutes are posted to the landfill website. They have up to the end of December's meeting, so they're pretty up to date. So if anyone wants to look, they're also there as soon as they're adopted by the landfill.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions? Straightforward. Thank you. Motion, all in favor? There you go. Thank you. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you to the public for coming out and attending, and drive safe. We will see you in 2 weeks.